Our sermon scripture for today comes from Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 through 9, which Tammy's just retold for us, but I'm going to read it out of the NRSV. So let us listen for the word of the Lord. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared with him Moses and Elijah, talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice called, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome with fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one there except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Would you please pray with me? Lord God, thank you for your word. Thank you for the truth that still comes from it. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. So on this last Sunday before Lent, I'm getting into the Lenten spirit. So I have a confession. Not a big surprise, I have confessions a lot, don't I? So here's my confession. I don't like to be touched. Yes, see the faces? I love it. I know this seems odd, given the fact that I hug everyone every Sunday. But given my natural tendencies, I prefer not to be touched. I had a thing whenever I was little that it hurt when people touched me. Very sensitive skin. And so I don't like to be tickled. It hurts. I don't really like to be touched. Motherhood has helped some in this regard. If by helped you mean kind of tortured me into understanding that sometimes you don't have an option. And my children are all very, very affectionate. And so I have gotten used to a certain level of touch. But something happened at the first church that I served that really changed the way that I looked at hugs, well, especially on Sunday mornings. You see, there was this older woman in our congregation. Now, bear in mind, I was 19 when I first started working full-time for a church. So older could have been anywhere from 50 to 100, I'm not sure. But she had this habit of hugging the pastor every Sunday. And it wasn't like a casual, "Oh, sweet, good to see you." It was a real, bear hug. And after she'd hug the pastor, she'd come up to me, and I would put my hand right out and shake it. Very firmly, very warmly. That was it. I always shook her hand. I always shook everyone's hand. I think that might have been me trying to be a bit more grown up than I felt at the time or thought they felt about me. For some reason, I thought a handshake was much more professional, much more appropriate. Then one Sunday, I filled the pulpit for this pastor while he was on vacation. I did everything he normally did in the service, and after the service, as everyone gathered to leave the sanctuary, I stood outside, greeting people as they left with a cordial handshake. But then this woman came up to me, and I took her hand, and then she embraced me with the opposite arm. I stood absolutely still, afraid to even breathe. I was so uncomfortable. but then she whispered something in my ear. She said, "I look forward to my Sunday morning hug. It's often the only time anyone touches me all week long." That, my friends, is when the right hand and left hug of Christian fellowship came into being for me. That moment when I realized that touch was a luxury that many people didn't get to receive. So what does that have to do with the Transfiguration? Well, as it turns out, plenty. Matthew's version of the Transfiguration story is very similar to the other translations that we have, but there's one very noticeable difference. In Matthew's account, Jesus touches the disciples. It's so small, such a minute detail, it's easy to overlook. But touch is an important part of Jesus' ministry. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus touches. He touches to heal, to accept, to comfort. Touch is vitally important in Jesus' ministry. He touches the untouchable, even the dead, people that would have made him unclean in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of those around him. But instead, these touches made people whole once more. And while I've heard the scripture of the Transfiguration preached on, I've preached on it myself many times, the focus is almost always on that mountaintop experience. How we have wonderful encounters with God, but these encounters, they're not permanent. They're to help steel us for the descent back into the suffering with Christ. But this year, when I read this passage, that didn't really resonate with me as much. You see, this year, I don't need to be reminded of pain and suffering found once you go down the mountainside. Friends, I'm way down the mountainside. I know the pain and suffering far, far too well. This year, I was struck by the vision of the disciples who have encountered the presence of the holy God, cowering on the ground, terrified by their experience, and awed by the glory of God. Glory. Now that word has several meanings. When I think about it, I tend to think of glorious, shining, splendid, perfection. But I was reading in the Christian Century this week that the Hebrew word for glory here is kabod, which means weight or heaviness. This speaks of the gravitas of Moses' experience with God on the mountain. Perhaps also the gravitas of the Christian life. That we're called not just to be prosperous and happy, but also to bear the cross of Christ. Maybe this means that when Jesus touches us, it's a heavy touch that acknowledges the suffering and sin intrinsic to the human condition, and yet at the same time, a healing touch that lets us know that we are not alone in the human condition. God's also there with us, helping us bear the heaviness. I've certainly found this borne out in my own experiences. When I think about my brushes with glory, my ordination service immediately comes to mind. The weight of hands placed upon my head and shoulders as women and men who had been through this process before offered prayers and commissioned me for the work to which I am called. I'm reminded of hands that offered comfort at the loss of a loved one throughout the years. How each touch somehow let me know that I was not alone, that the load of grief was not mine alone to bear. You see, Jesus came into the world as the Emmanuel, God with us, to be among us. not as a statue to be admired or looked at, not as a celebrity surrounded by bodyguards to keep the riffraff at bay. Jesus came to touch and to be touched, to love us wholly in every sense of the word. My friends, I think that's the sermon I need to hear this year. Not that there are two different, distinct moments in our lives, glory and suffering, and that we're called to immerse ourselves in suffering for the sake of building up glory. Rather, through Christ, we are bound into relationship with God, a God who is present with us in the glory and in the suffering, which are always intertwined this side of heaven. There is no on the mountain or off the mountain. They're just the hours and days and years that we've been given. But they're filled with God's grace, despite all earthly limitations. So this Lent, as we journey together, we'll be searching for that grace a little more than normal. And I'm confident that with the touch of the Master and the love of one another, we will find that grace close at hand. Would you please pray with me? Lord God, we thank you that you love us enough to come near, to stand among us as Christ, present in our world, to dwell within us through the Holy Spirit. God, may we recognize your gift of presence today and every day, and may we share that gift through words of encouragement, through hope, through touch. Lord, that we might remind one another of your continuing love for us. May we be your hands and your feet in this world, God, reaching out to those in need. For it's in your name we pray.